everyone, my name is Brittany Stewart and I'm a senior QA consultant at QualityWorks Consulting Group. I am based in Kingston, Jamaica, where I work with my team to help improve the software quality and QA processes for our clients. In addition to my passion for QA and testing, I'm also very passionate about design. And so outside of my QA role, I am a founder and creative director for a design studio called Agile Creations. And this is where I help small business owners create beautiful and functional brands. In my personal life, I am a wife and a mom to a very sweet and energetic 3-year-old son who keeps me on the tip of my toes every day. If you would like to connect with me after this session, feel free to send me a message on Twitter or LinkedIn at the links on this slide. I'll be happy to connect with you there. The title of today's session is Transitioning into QA, My Shift Left. And I'll be sharing my transition story with you, as well as some examples via stories of how I have applied my non-technical and transferable skills to help advance my QA career. Let's start with how my transition began. My transition began in 2015. While I was pursuing a career as a freelance graphic designer, I was contracted by QualityWorks to redesign their company logo and marketing material. During this time, I had to actively listen to my client to understand their needs, and I had to ask a lot of questions to gain clarity on the target audience, etc. The communication was also a very big part of what I was doing. Time management as well, because we had deadlines to meet, so that was something that I had to do on a daily basis, as well as, of course, thinking out of the box in order to create a unique and beautiful design. That's where my creativity came in. But looking back now at that experience, my people skills and the communication skills were key in the success of this project at the time, and that ultimately led to my contract being extended with QualityWorks. A few months later, in 2016, I transitioned to Executive Administrative Assistant for QualityWorks. In the executive administrative role, I had to work closely with our CEO, as well as with our small team at the time, to ensure that we were doing things efficiently. And so involved the use of my communication skills, my creativity, the time management was another big one, and the general people skills just to be able to work with the team. But the main thing from this experience in 2016 is that this was when my eyes were opened to the tech world and some of the opportunities that were available there. And so it was at this time that I got very curious about what the team was doing in the office on a daily basis. And I began to ask a lot of questions and do research. You see, the fact is, earlier on in my studies, I had intended to pursue a career in computer science, but I gave it up for the admin and business side of things because thinking about who I was and my skills, I had believed that the admin would have fit my personality a little bit better. But the fact is also that I have also been highly inclined to IT. So even without the technical knowledge, I was always drawn to this industry for some reason. As an executive administrative assistant, it was very important for me to communicate often and clearly. Communication between the CEO as well as the team was essential. It was key. And so a quote that I want to reference here, something that I keep in mind whenever we're talking about communication, is this quote by Brené Brown, where she says in her book Dare to Lead, where she says, "Clear is kind and unclear is unkind." So during this time, keeping that quote in mind, I began to ask a lot more questions, like I said, and I did more research, all in the aim of gaining the clarity about our company and our competitors. It was somewhere around this point in that role that I clearly communicated to our CEO that I was interested in a career in tech. And she helped me understand what the possibilities were, what my future could look like in tech. And it was at that time I realized that transitioning into a tech role did not, from a design background for me, did not necessarily have to go via a design role. For example, UI and UX design, because I had originally thought that that was possibly the only way for me to enter the tech world. My CEO introduced me to QA and testing, and she took a leap of faith with me and placed me on my first project. This project was awesome. It was great. And here's why. As a user of mobile and web applications, I would find myself using these applications on a daily basis. I would be identifying inconsistencies either in the design or the functionality of the overall application. But there was nothing that I could do at the time. In this role, on this new project, I realized that I could actually help to fix some of these issues that I was seeing. I could help in the design. I could log the issues and work with the development team to get it resolved. This was like a game changer. But one of the most important things I think that came out of it was that I realized there was a gap between our end users and the developers, and the role of QA can bridge the gap between those roles. So it got me very interested. In 2017, that's when the real shift left happened. My first official mobile testing project, it was an Android mobile testing project at the time. And I remember feeling scared about the whole experience, but nevertheless, I jumped right in. And I leveraged my communication skills. I leveraged my design background knowledge. I leveraged my eye for detail. And, it went well. A little bit later on in that year, I was placed on another project, but this time it was an iOS mobile testing project. Here again, I found that my communication skills and the creativity and the design background that I had, plus the eye for detail and the people skills, played a very important part in me achieving success on these projects. So the projects went very well. They went so well that I remember being crowned the QA champion. And at that time, being a first-time tester, it was just so motivating. It was great feedback to get. And I took that and I still hold it with me to this day, QA champion. But I'll tell you a little bit more about that experience and what exactly happened a little later on in the session. But still, along the journey, between 2018 and 2019, I realized that there were still some gaps in my base or foundation knowledge. And so I set out that year and attained my certifications in software testing. Since then, I'm proud to say that I've participated on a number of mobile and web testing projects across various industries, both locally and internationally. It's been very good experiences, and I'm going to talk about a few of them as we go through. So over the years, I realized that I have grown in my technical skill area, but that's not the only thing that has helped me get this far. My non-technical skills and my transferable skills have been there with me from the beginning, and I believe they have helped me get to this point. Now, there are a number of non-technical and transferable skills that I believe are important in a QA role. But for the remainder of this session, I'm going to be highlighting just 3 just because of the time that we have to discuss. But the ones that I'll be highlighting today are our communication skills, one, the creative thinking skills, as well as the people skills. So let's take communication skills, for example. Throughout my years on projects, a common bottleneck that I have experienced, it's a very simple one, but it's common that I've experienced is poor practices in our defect reporting processes, which slow down our client projects. And because of the back and forth that's needed when bugs or defects are not properly logged. In my role as a QA and in testing, that using my written communication skills, I practice good defect reporting practices. And this helps my team to be productive because we minimize that back and forth between myself and the developers, any points that aren't clear. And so, just remember, clear is kind, unclear is unkind. So just for example, when we talk about good defect reporting practices, I would do some of the simple things, some of these simple things using my written communication skills. I always clearly outline my steps to reproduce, not in paragraphs, but in a numbered list. I also specify the test environment or wherever the defect has been found because we can sometimes have multiple environments, and we'll be sending the developers on a goose chase to figure out where exactly the issue is when we can clearly state that it happened in this environment. I also do my best to establish reproducibility. So I try a few times to reproduce the bug before I log it. And I do state in my tickets or in my defects how many times I was able to reproduce the issue. And I ensure to add screenshots and video recordings of the bug in action. So in addition to all these written communication skills, I still make an effort to make myself available to clarify any questions or anything that the developers might come to me with, because clear is kind. For another example of how I have used my communication skills is to always or do my best to account for the non-technical persons in our projects and in our project discussions and team meetings. I would leverage my visual communication skills and verbal communication skills just to make sure that I'm speaking in layman terms. I cut out some of the technical jargons when we're speaking to make sure that it is as clear to persons, to our stakeholders, as it is to the developers. Another little example of this using the visual aids is I've been playing around with the mind mapping technique, but recently I transformed or traditional test plan and test strategy from a wordy jargon-filled document to a mind map that only highlighted the critical information for our projects and some of the other areas that I believe were key for our project managers to have. These are just two examples of how the communication skills have been applied in my role. The mind map I've gotten good feedback on it, which is very exciting because it's been helping a lot of teams communicate clearly with their stakeholders about what is going on in their projects. All right, moving on to the next one. This is another area that I believe is very important. A big part of what we do as QA is being detail-oriented. Back in 2017 and 2018, while I was on those mobile testing projects, I would leverage my eye for detail and the creative thinking skills to thoroughly test the application. Remember back in 2017 and 2018, I did not have the formal or technical knowledge and the formal training as yet, but I found myself instinctively reviewing the application and testing for things such as checking for accuracies and consistency across the text styles and the alignment of the text in our applications. I would also review things such as the line heights and the spacings between the elements on the page. Another one that I would look at is our company colors, and maybe that's because I've created so many brand style guides that I know it's very important to stick with those hex codes and the button colors. So I would make sure that just in general, overall, the application, it was using colors that matched with the company brand style guide. Another thing that I would check for is just the resolution of our images, just to make sure they weren't pixelated, as well as the fact that they matched the sections and communicated the message well from a visual standpoint. And lastly, I would review the application, especially on those projects, the mobile testing ones, on multiple devices. But my main aim was just to look for the accurateness of the design across various screens, and just to make sure that everything was consistent, because consistency is important. To some persons, these things may seem small, but as a user and as a person with design background, I understand the importance of having these elements consistently laid out across the application, because it can have either a negative or a positive impact on the overall user experience and the user flow for our end users. So I'd always prioritize that in my testing. Still do today, very important. And like in my projects today, I do leverage my creative thinking skills to improve the usability of our applications. Finally, the people skills. Back in 2018, I had an experience of missing a very high severity bug that was released into production. At the time, I was in charge of doing full regression testing on our application on a weekly basis, and I was always doing well, but this time I missed something critical. My then VP of engineering had given me a call on Slack that day, I remember, and he asked me a very dreaded question: how could you have missed that bug? I was so crushed at the time. And I mean, so crushed that I began to question whether or not I made the right choice, making this career, transition. But after our call, I decided to listen to what he had said. I went back to the drawing board, reviewed my test cases and the business requirements. I identified where the gaps were in my test coverage. Monday, I believe it was, in our stand-up, I proactively and honestly acknowledged the mistake that was made. And I made sure to and let the team know that I was taking steps to rectify this issue and to just make sure that it never happened again. In hindsight, though, I mean, when I talk about this experience now, I realize quality is not just on me as a QA, it's a team effort. But even though I didn't know that at the time, I still took steps to rectify the issue. And I did this by, you see, these skills are kind of intertwined, because I pulled on my creative thinking skills to use the mind mapping technique to ensure that, going forward, I had outlined as much test coverage as possible. And this was just me making sure that I took the criticism constructively, I owned the responsibility, and I also took steps to make sure that the mistake didn't happen again. I did what was in my control to help the team. From that day and that experience, I believe I gained a lot of trust and respect from not just the VP, but the team in general. And so I believe that's why they had crowned me the QA champion for the year. I believe that was one of the most important moments, just owning the responsibility and taking that criticism constructively and being honest about the whole situation. Another example of people skills, I once had a project at a financial institution with a very small team. And I remember when we just started the project, we were very excited and we were learning a lot. But as the months progressed, we started to feel drained and just stressed out. This was mainly because the environment that we were in did not necessarily foster innovation and the creativity. We weren't really able to make any changes to improve the processes, and that can be very disheartening as a QA when you're in an environment and you really do want to make things better. But though the environment was tough, there were a few things I decided to do here, leveraging my people skills and the communication skills again, that I believed were critical for the success of that project. There were some things that I did to help myself and the team because I was in charge of communications between the team and the client on our most difficult days. And I mean difficult on the client side and difficult on the team side. And I was very tolerant and patient with our client, as well as very supportive and understanding to the team. So I'd listen to what they had to say, any complaints that they had, try to make things light and try to maintain my positive attitude throughout that project. In the end, though, we wrapped it up and we were better and stronger because of the experience. I mean, as a team, we had grown a lot. We had grown in our knowledge of like technical knowledge, but we also grew in our non-technical skill areas of patience and just working together as a team and supporting each other. It was very important for us to use those to get through. So I believe the people skills, my people skills, really helped us get through that project. On our most stressful days, we had each other to lean on. So as I mentioned, we know that there are a lot of transferable skills and non-technical skills that can be used in our QA role. But for me and from my experience and my journey from design to admin to tech, these three were the most instrumental in my growth and success. And those were the communication skills, the creative thinking skills, as well as the people skills. What about you? If you're coming from an accounting role, reviewing numbers and calculations on the applications, it depends on the application that we're talking about, but like leveraging your skills such as the eye for detail and the domain knowledge that you have as well coming from that environment and using them to help. If you have a background in law, be the one on your team to advocate for quality. And you can do this using your communication skills. Conflicts on our projects are inevitable, and so maybe your negotiation skills can also come in and help to save the team, because it can be difficult communicating risks and negotiating with stakeholders. So if you are a lawyer and you know how to do this and you have those communication, negotiation, conflict resolution skills, bring them in and use them to help make your team better. And, if you're a parent, if you're a mom or a dad, we know how important our time is, and we're juggling a lot of things. So, like, one of the simplest things you can do is to help if meetings are being scheduled and we don't have clear agendas outlined in our meetings. And so when we're going to the meetings, there's kind of no flow. You can be the one to address that. You can help the team by saying, hey guys, we need to clearly outline our agendas, and this is what we're going to discuss for the time, because that's your time management skill coming in there to help. And lastly, you can use your people skills. Using your people skills to bring your organization and teams together, especially if you're in a big organization and you may have like a separate QA department separate from a development department. You can use those to make a positive impact on your team. So guys, what I'm saying is our technical skills in the world of QA are important, but I believe that our non-technical and the transferable skills can be our secret weapon in helping us go from just a regular QA on our projects to being that QA champion for your projects and make you a more impactful tester. I'm going to leave you here. I want to thank you very much for listening to my story. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you were able to pull some value from some of the stories I've shared and some of the examples I shared just now. Next up is our Q&A session, and I'm curious to really hear of how you have used your non-technical or transferable skills to help improve the overall quality of your software applications and to make a positive impact on your projects. Feel free to ask many questions in this session, or as I said before, you can connect with me on Twitter or LinkedIn. I'll be happy to talk there. But until then, everyone, happy testing, and let's all be QA champions for our project teams.